Hey guys, great to be here. Thanks so much for having us. So Amplify, we're building out a Bitcoin abstraction layer. What does that mean? Essentially what we're doing is we're unlocking DeFi yields through AI powered abstraction. Abstraction basically meaning removing all of the technical knowledge barriers to allow people to enter DeFi. Amplify was basically created off of the failings of centralized money markets like Celsius, BlockFi, and Voyager. For those who remember, very popular platforms, huge amounts of user adoption numbers, high TVL, ultimately flawed through their centralization model. People took in their assets and misappropriated those assets. And then when they messed up and went bankrupt, they took everyone's money with them, and most of which has yet to be recovered. Over $10 billion has basically been lost. It's really put a huge dent in the sort of trust in those centralized providers. There are some that survived, like Nexo, for example, but now people are unsure whether to keep their money there or not. On the flip side, DeFi also hasn't been much better in many regards. There's been over $7 billion lost since 21, and over 500 high profile hacks, and not including some smaller cases of fraud and rug pulls and whatever else have gone on. So I'm sure the number is much, much higher. But still, decentralization offers a whole host of benefits, including self-custody and being able to distribute risk. But primarily the issue is people accessing DeFi, right? So we have nearly 600 million people globally who bought cryptocurrencies, 220 million of which are Bitcoin investors, yet only 6 or 7 million people regularly use DeFi. And so why is that? And so we found through market research, and I'm sure a lot of people here could probably just guess, and that technical knowledge barriers is the biggest reason for people not getting involved in DeFi. So when you look at the Bitcoin ecosystem specifically, we're looking at 25 major blockchains generate yield across Bitcoin, tokenized variants of Bitcoin, over 400 protocols. We're looking at thousands of liquidity pools. We're looking at 20 different variants of Bitcoin. So you got Bitcoin itself, and then you can exchange that into wrap BTC, LBTC, EBTC, CBBTC, etc. So just like variants of Bitcoin and tokenized Bitcoin in order to generate yields. And there's 100 plus wallet providers as well. So that's just the very beginning of getting involved in DeFi. And then users have to also get their head around the multitude of different networks, right? Are you an EVM, in which case you're looking at Ethereum, BNB Chain, Optimism, Arbitrum, Bates, etc. Are you on the new BitVM networks, which is like Core, BitLayer, and then the gas fees that come with that in their native gas tokens, perhaps. Then you've got the issues of single versus dual side liquidity, yield decay, and permanent loss, wrapped versus synthetic assets, bridges, collateralization ratios. So this goes on and on. And so for people to get involved in this space, it's extremely complex. And so that's the reason why they deposit in the likes of Celsius or Nexo or BlockFi. Very simple, set up an account, deposit your assets and start earning. So until we basically remove these technical knowledge barriers, no one's going to really get involved in DeFi. Current protocols that are in DeFi optimize for DeFi users. Great. So we have aggregators and things like that make it easier to earn on your USDT, but it's still only targeting the pool of users of 6-7 million regular DeFi users. And so what we look to do basically is how can we offer the accessibility that centralized providers like Nexo offer, but also offer access to DeFi by removing the technical knowledge barriers. And so what we built essentially is what we call a Bitcoin omni-chain abstraction layer. So we're looking at account abstractions. That's, for example, people logging in with a centralized user experience, email and password, 2FA. We look at chain abstraction. So users being able to access yields on different chains without them knowing what chain they're on, essentially. Token abstraction. So if we take Bitcoin, for example, you deposit your BTC, but that could be auto swapped to wrap BTC, LBTC, EBTC, Uni BTC, whatever variant it is, to generate those yields for the users without them having to manually do it themselves. And then finally, gas abstraction. So the only way that we can automate all of this is by paying the gas fees on our end. So the user doesn't pay any gas. They simply deposit and they earn. We do this through our AI model that we built out. Essentially, the AI model will distribute the assets on behalf of the user and then rebalance the assets based on available APYs, liquidity pool depth, volumes, historical performance, and a whole host of other criteria that we look at. The reason why we're targeting the Bitcoin ecosystem specifically, this can be applied to any asset, Solana, Ethereum, Ton. But primarily the reason why we're targeting the Bitcoin ecosystem is because number one, it's the number one cryptocurrency by market cap. It also has the most amount of investors globally. There's a huge amount of institutional interest, and yet it's still very untapped. It's still a very new ecosystem. And so what we look to do is basically bring this ability to generate yields in DeFi to a much wider market. So Ethereum is around 26% of tokens are staked across DeFi for various use cases, farming and yield generation and liquidity provision. If we look at others like Say and Sui and Solana, it's much closer to 70 and 80%. And in fact, the top 10 L1s excluding Bitcoin is 55%. Bitcoin by default is less than 1%. In fact, up until a few days ago, if you take just tokenized Bitcoin, it was around 0.33 to 0.4%. Yet, despite the low adoption in terms of the amount that's staked, it still had 10x growth over the last 2 months. And the overall ecosystem has seen 600% increase in TVL in the last 6 months alone. So there is an opportunity there. And there's also institutional interest in building out this ecosystem so they can put their Bitcoin to use as well. Overall, Immaturable is a good opportunity as well to get involved. If we look at the market opportunity, assuming that Bitcoin will hit $1 million per token, Fidelity predicts it by around 2030. We look at a sort of market, total addressable market of around $20 trillion. And if Bitcoin can match the levels of staking that you see across the likes of Ethereum, which is again the lowest layer one that we see, which is 26%, it would be sort of $5 trillion opportunity. At the moment, like I said, there's only 0.33% compared to 25%. So there's still a lot of untapped potential there as well. And the outcome basically of all of this, what we see is essentially the DeFi access for all. So we're unlocking DeFi yields for over 220 million Bitcoin investors globally. The asset diversification, right? So distribution of assets across chains and protocols to ensure no single point of failure. What I mean by that is if you put all of your assets on Celsius and Celsius goes bankrupt, you lose all of your money. If you put your assets into something like Amplifi and we diversify it across 10 different pools and one pool is exploited, you lose 10% of your money, but 90% is still intact. And that's it. Our AI also acts as a risk management engine. So it analyzes on-chain data 24/7 and takes any action to protect users' assets if necessary, such as depegging events or liquidity rushes on liquidity pools. And the main thing as well is it's all fully transparent, right? With Celsius, you give them your money like a bank. You don't know what they do. You have an idea. They take some of it, they loan it out, but you don't know how they're using their money elsewhere. They put it into UST, for example, which collapsed and caused a systematic collapse across all the centralized providers. But with us, obviously, it's all on chain. It's all transparent. You can see what protocols are being used, where it's being used, the amounts that are being used, and how that's being diversified and distributed across these various chains and networks as well. For where we are at the moment, we've been around for probably a year building, and closed beta is live. And we started off with stablecoins initially and pivoted towards Bitcoin recently. So the MVP is out on the stablecoin side of things. We will be tying that to incentivization and rewards. If anyone wants to get involved, we'd love to have people test it out. We're also fundraising. So anyone who's listening, we're on our pre-seed round at the moment. So we're looking to raise that before the end of the year. We're looking to launch in Q1 next year. Great thing is we've got a great team behind us. Myself, I've been involved in the space for 8 years as an investor and working for the last 4 years full-time, head of growth capacity across a multitude of different protocols. Our CMO is the ex-head of performance marketing for OKX and Bybit. Our chief community officer is the ex-head of community for Zeely. We've got a really stellar team that's been built around us to help us deliver this vision. We'd love anyone listening to join us and just be a part of the journey as we look to launching Q1 next year. And I'll pause there.